All right, friends. Well, welcome back to the podcast. Really excited to talk to our guest, James, today. So, James Baxter is a co founder of Exodus 90. You might be familiar with Exodus, and he served as CEO of Exodus for 5 years. He attended St. John Vianney Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota, and St. Minrad. Did I get that right?
Yeah, St. Meinrad, close enough.
Meinrad. I know we rehearsed it before. Meinrad, St. Meinrad Seminary and School of Theology in St. Meinrad, Indiana, before discerning God was calling him to marriage and secular life. In 2015, James assumed responsibility for scaling Exodus 90 from a seminary formation program into a spiritual exercise to bring the freedom of Jesus Christ to his men. James lives in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with his wife Colleen, son Joseph, and baby girl Genevieve, and they attend St. John the Baptist Parish. James, thanks for making time for our podcast.
Justin, appreciate you, and thanks for this invite. Yeah, it's a delight, and I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, so Exodus, it's been around and growing in the church like crazy. I would imagine our listeners know about Exodus, but can you answer the question you maybe answered 10,000 times at this point? Can you just describe Exodus 90 for those who might not be familiar?
Yeah, Exodus 90 is a 90-day spiritual exercise for men. Everything that we do here at Exodus is all about helping men find greater freedom. And obviously, the world has a definition of freedom that we don't share. That the world says, we need to be kind of detached and free to do whatever we want, whenever we want, with whoever we want, for how long we want. And obviously, as Catholics and as Christians, we look at that differently. So freedom for us is just all about putting ourselves into a place where we can love. Primarily cultivate our love for God. And from that contemplative place to respond to our vocations as generously as we can. So vast majority of our guys are married. So most of them are coming to just be a better husband, a better father. And, that's really what it's all about. So kind of the fundamentals of Exodus are kind of the pillars or the prayer, the ascetic and the fraternal component. We'll get into some of that, but we believe that those parts of our tradition have a lot to offer men today.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at what we're doing, it's really very simple, representing ancient truths, and just watching how they visibly benefit men today, which is really moving.
Yeah, it's so great y'all are bringing that back. I feel like it's an overlooked aspect of our faith. So I participated last year in a group. It was a challenge. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. But for me, what I found was my own limitations are self-made of what I'm capable of doing. So it was freeing in that way. It's like, could I make it a week without eating? It's like, yeah, I think I could. Not that it's an Exodus discipline, right? But just the increased fasting, it's like, it really showed me what I'm capable of. So I thank y'all for that. And I know you've got some great data. Third-party independent research says 99% of men report a freedom from previous attachment to sins and pleasures of the world after completing the 3-month exercise. And more than 50,000 men, including priests and bishops, have journeyed through it. Did you know it would be that popular when you were getting involved with Exodus?
Yeah, definitely not. In many ways, so this whole thing started as a seminary formation program first, from a mentor of mine that he had started. And so when he kind of proposed sharing this with others, I was kind of doing it as a favor to a friend. I needed something to do. So, it seemed like a worthwhile cause. And I kind of like the chaos of having no structure or roadmap and just having to figure something out from nothing. So it just kind of suited me on a natural level. But then obviously just in praying over it, the Lord was like really clear with me that the impact of this was in the future. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time. But watching it unfold as it has been, just a total surprise and delight. And I'm just grateful that God is using this and that men are taking it up. Honestly, it's every year, when we keep growing, I'm so moved by the guys, all of whom have a history, a story, all of them struggling with different things, also with different gifts and skills. And I'm just so struck by how men in very different places are finding something in this. And I think primarily that's because like when we place ourselves and our unique stories before the person of Jesus Christ, he is able to just work wonders. Like when we just create that space. You know, he was doing that 2000 years ago. He's been doing it ever since. And he does it with us, you know, when we allow him to. And sometimes when we don't even allow him to. But yeah, no, it's been a real delight. But as for the growth, I definitely think it's because at the end of the day, like just placing men before Christ. It's just like with all their gifts, all their skills, and allowing him to just kind of move them forward. I mean, he's the master, he's the Lord. And you know, I guess it's not surprising from another perspective that this would happen when you make that time for him. What you said though really struck me, this idea that, you know, we have these limitations sometimes that we think we're working in, that we can kind of break out of. And this is actually one of my, I don't know, I don't have a lot of hot takes, but one of my perspectives as well is like a lot of the things we interpret as crosses, you know, either if it's from like personal experiences that have been really challenging or even traumas, you know, or just kind of things in professional life that are challenging. A lot of the times we can kind of like spiritualize them to the point where it's like, we almost just like want the suffering, and we don't believe God can heal, or like we don't believe in recovery. And I just don't think that's right. Like not from the identity of like a son of God, you know, for whom, you know, we're beloved sons, beloved daughters, you know, knitted in the womb, crafted, you know, with all of our kind of uniqueness. And anyway, I love this idea of just like blowing out this idea of limitations and just watching what God can do. I'm a big believer that, you know, recovery, healing are possible, and are possible in this life, you know, if we do the work. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think the great thing about Exodus is it will push participants, you know, likely beyond. It just doubles down on like, you think that's challenging here, we're going to just double down on this, you know. So I struggle a bit with sloth. Okay, I can be pretty lazy at times, or just grab a bag of chips, sit on the couch. So for me, the hardest thing was, it wasn't just the fasting. You know, Exodus wasn't like, you're not just going to fast Fridays, you're going to fast Wednesdays and Fridays. And for me, that was so hard because I got through it on Wednesday, and I really obeyed the rules. I mean, it's the church is fasting, you know, this day and age, and that's hard for me. And then I'd get a break on Thursday. And it's like, we're doing it again on Friday, but kind of doubling down on it forced me to go outside my norm, because left to my own devices, I would have just done maybe one day a week, maybe, and, you know, patted myself on the back.
Yeah. It's so funny because like some guys will look at the fast and be like, gosh, like compared to parts of the tradition of the church, like this is soft.
I know.
You know, and other guys will look at it and be like, gosh, this is so hard, you know. And so basically what we tried to do is just graft it into kind of the church's kind of standards today. And you know, we find, you know, kind of a nice middle way there that accomplishes the point, which is the idea that at the end of the day, like we can't be, you know, our souls can't be nourished by bread alone. And fasting really helps us to return to that kind of scriptural truth.
Yeah. Of the disciplines, is there a common one that's like most challenging for participants? Is there one that comes up again and again? Or it's all across the board?
Yeah, everyone is so different.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say some men really struggle with parts, others struggle with different parts. You know, I'll never forget talking to the first groups and finding some guys who were like, loved the cold showers. And I was just like, what are you talking about?
I know
like,
a guy
you know?
that, yeah, kept doing the cold showers for about 6 months afterwards because he found it to be the best way for him to wake up. But the fraternal aspect must be, it's really important and really fun, right? Because you have guys text, like I was on a group text and some guys were so upset about the showers. I didn't care about the showers, but the fasting. But listen to this. I have another friend that did the group with me. He's a dad with a family of, he's got 6 kids. I come to find out that his typical day, he actually only eats dinner like every day. And then so you're in that fraternal aspect. You're like, wow, I'm kind of a wimp. Like I need Ty to rub off on me here. He's like, he's really fasting all the time. So that fraternal aspect is really, I think, what pushes it to the next level.
And
right?
it keeps you grounded too. I think, you know, when people ask like, what's the benefit of a fraternity? I think it's like primarily about encouragement, you know, because obviously when we're struggling or we're, you know, struggling with different sins and vices, it's just so easy to give way to discouragement, which is just the devil's playground. Like he just loves us to be bummed. He loves us to, you know, waste away a few days.
Self-pity.
He loves that. And so the beautiful thing about a fraternity is like the encouragement. I find so many times where I would want to give way to discouragement and find the, an encouragement in a brother's word. But at the same time, you also need accountability. You need a place where you're in the light and you're not hiding from anything. And I think when we look at
Mhm.
scandals in the church and we look even at recent history, it's like, yeah, you don't get into that place when you're really in the light and you're really
Yeah.
accountable to others. And, I'm not saying all that it's easily explainable, because there's so many different factors at play there. But fundamentally, it's like you're not in the light. You're letting yourself live in darkness, and then that becomes habitual, and that's what a fraternity does. It's a place to be called out, to be accountable, to be inspired, by the gifts and skills of other people, just like you were with your friend Ty.
It
So
Yeah, so but, that vulnerability, but in a
yeah,
group that is pursuing Christ, yeah, that the vices will come to light pretty quickly, but, it's a helpful tool for guys to make great friends. Because nowadays, we know there's data and research that points that men are struggling just having good friends, and the
yeah,
value of just 1 or 2 good friends that you
yeah.
can be honest with and will be honest with you. You cannot put a price on that, It's like that
It's
saying,
so
"Saints come
true.
in clusters too," you know?
Oh, it's so true. Like, yeah, I mean, reading stories of saints, you realize they interact with a number throughout their lifetime. And I'm always
Mhm.
just so struck by that. I remember, so St. John Henry Newman's my favorite saint, and
Okay.
when he was struggling through his conversion,
Mhm.
for a couple year period between Anglicanism and Catholicism, he's like, you know what? At some point, he just said, "Send me a saint. There's no more reading I need to do. There's no more praying I need to do.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
send me a testimony." And Blessed Dominic Barbary, this random
Wow.
Italian missionary who happened to be called to England, and found himself, in Oxford,
That's
shows up
wow.
and receives him into the church. And so,
Because you
anyway,
can't
like that's
argue
just one
that.
story of many. Yeah,
You can't
yeah,
argue that testimony, but it's like Chesterton with Saint Francis of Assisi, right?
yeah,
He said,
yeah,
"I wanna be part of the church that can produce a Saint Francis."
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so one thing I wanna ask you about is what do you think? Because there's a lot of ministries and apostolates struggling to grow right now in the church, right? I will tell you one thing I've seen that's key to success in like any ministry really sustaining is a team, a close knit team. You cannot do any ministry solo. But looking at the growth of Exodus over the last, um, so that's about 6 years, 7 years now, right? Scaling Exodus. What do you think have been the key things y'all have done internally, the Exodus group, to help it grow at the rate at which it's grown?
I love that question. You mentioned the team. I am so blessed to work with the 7 other men that I work with on a daily basis. Some of us, went to seminary together. Others are, my brother works with us now. Others were in Focus. So there are some shared experiences of formation that we had that had real effects on our life that inspires us today. But we just have incredible guys working here, and so I just want to give a huge shout out to our team. There's really only 7 of us working on the back of it right now, and hopefully we'll be growing here soon. We need some help,
Wow, that's
but
great.
I'm just so privileged to and inspired by the guys we work with. I think a couple other thoughts. Just being really open and really honest, about how things are, not just today in the church, but also in the work you do,
Yeah.
and not being afraid of being wrong. Like
Mhm.
I was recently talking with some like professionals, like lawyers. I talked to a journalist recently, and they're all about like how they know the law or they're great journalists and all that stuff. And like when you're doing ministry, and especially when you're starting something out and you feel called to do that, it's like you really need to be okay with the fact that you have no idea how this is going to work, and you have
Yeah,
no idea like what it's going to take,
and you
and you need to be open to just being wrong about a lot of stuff, and like
yes,
you just yeah,
it's just like being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs
exactly,
they love to fail and because they
yeah.
learn from it, but in the church, sometimes we are so, I think, afraid of failure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know, and it's like it's okay to be wrong, like, and from a spiritual perspective too, it's just so good for us to get grounded like that, So, I don't know, I think just kind of an openness to, trying new things, is pretty important. And then I'd say like one other thing we've done pretty well is I've always got like my heart's in the chapel, but my mind is kind of in the world. And I just like
Mhm.
really study why things work.
Mhm.
And years ago, we kind of made a call, and it was not a controversial one. It was just kind of by necessity, basically.
Mhm.
In 2015, when we were starting out, all church programming flowed like through the diocese to the parish, to the priest, to the people. And when I met up with the bishop that ended up supporting us and really gave us his blessing to do this work, I just said, I want to try something different. It's like if Exodus is meaningful, men will share it.
Yeah.
And that was it, because I was 24. I didn't have a network. I wasn't a Bishop Barron, or I wasn't a Taylor Marshall, or I wasn't a, Dr. Hahn, like I was
Right.
just James.
Right.
And so, it's just like it had to be a powerful thing to grow.
Mhm.
And that model of like kind of growth and kind of really focusing on organically and just through testimony and
Yeah.
witness really served us well, and it's really kind of paved the way, for, where we're at today, and why does Exodus grow? Because men have an experience and then they share that with others. Like that's it.
Yeah. So there's a book by Malcolm Gladwell I read years ago, but he talked about the stickiness factor that for something to grow word of mouth organically, it's got to be something that's very easy to just keep sharing with other people. And I think Exodus really has that. It's really easy for me to tell anyone I know what is Exodus and why should you do it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's key, and that's how it happened for me out here in in rural Texas. James, a friend invited me, so
Yeah. Yeah. How
it
about that?
worked.
Yeah.
So maybe we could just talk a little bit about your own personal faith journey. Really interesting reading in your bio. You spent time in the seminary. So you mind sharing about that time in the seminary and how the Lord worked in your life to call you out of seminary and into married life and what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I went to the seminary at 18, and it was interesting because it was kind of an extension of my time in high school. I was in a serving fraternity, kind of a traditional serving group called the Knights of the Holy Temple. So it was all based on like the Knights Templar. And so from 15, I had these interesting, formation kind of experiences. Like had mentors, had spiritual directors, had priests actively involved in my life. Had opportunities for the fraternity elements we've talked about, and just did worked wonders for me. And really kind of laid a foundation for me to kind of build on from that. Ended up going to the seminary. Um, and college seminary was a really powerful time. The fraternity was so real. Like you knew the men that you were journeying with, you knew the guys on your floor, you knew what they were struggling with, what they were great at. Like it was just so powerful to be
Mhm.
so known and loved by other guys pursuing holiness like that. And at the same time, it was in the middle of like SJV is just a dorm among a bunch of dorms. Like it's
Mhm.
just right in the campus. So like you walk out the door and it's mission opportunity. And I just loved that kind of integration of seminary
Mhm.
formation with just real life. And just yeah, I loved that. So also when I was up there, I encountered Catholic Studies, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's a department there that's kind of become pretty influential on kind of how Catholic education, higher education is working on different campuses and not only Catholic campuses. But it's really there that I had kind of a conversion of mind, like an intellectual conversion where um, I just came to understand that, like, yeah, the cross is the center of history, and anything true, you know, unites in the person of Christ. And like he has a say and an influence over everything. It's just like helped me, I guess, from a standpoint of like drinking the Kool-Aid or just really realizing like there's just all this stuff is true and
Mhm.
there's no way to escape it. Like you're
Mhm.
either going to grow closer to him or you're going to move farther away from him,
Mhm.
on a path you don't want to be on.
Mhm.
Catholic studies helped me to see that. Like it
Hmm.
built on the contemplative foundation that I had as a boy, and into the seminary. So that was really hugely influential. I spent a little bit of time in a monastery, and that's kind of where I realized
Wow.
that the Lord was calling me out. And I just had
Yeah.
fundamentally had a desire to be married. I wanted to be
Yeah.
married.
Yeah.
I really wanted. Yeah, I love, like, I don't know. A lot of people can really disparage kind of secular life today, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always just been so fascinated by it all, and just like how can we learn and take in what's good and apply it
Yeah.
to the mission of the church. Like I love that stuff. So
Yeah.
all that kind of came back for me, and and yeah, so I ended up leaving. I mean, I don't know about you, but the guys that are like really in the seminary and really love it and commit to it, leaving's
Mhm.
challenging because it
I
you lose
I
some
bet.
of your bearings, and people relate to you differently, and it's like you're the same person, but for some people, you're kind of a failure because you didn't
Yeah.
become a priest,
Yeah. Right.
and for other people, they just don't even know how to look at you anymore.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you, like it was a challenging time for me, and what I found is for guys that were really in it, that's always the case. I mean, it's never
Yeah.
easy to just walk away. So fortunately, though, you find providence in that poverty, and I did in a big way. And it basically from the day I left ended up kind of going full time on what's become Exodus, and
Mhm.
been really blessed since. Met my wife, and that's just kind of been everything that I was hoping for. She's an amazing woman, a holy woman, calls me on every day
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
be a better man, and I'm just so grateful for her and our life together. Now, and especially now having kids, like children that would not have existed had we not come together, is just so amazing, so humbling, and
Yeah.
so meaningful too. Yeah, I can't even really articulate that as meaningfully as I'd like to, but no, it's a full life today, and I'm so blessed by how God's providence has kind of unfolded everything. Certainly in a way that I didn't anticipate, and certainly in a way that surprised me. But when I wake up these days, I'm just like so grateful for
Mhm.
everything that's happened.
Yeah, that is awesome. What affirmation of your choice. So many wonderful fruits and just pursuing what felt natural. And that journey of the vocation discernment, that I feel like if you really go into it, that's where a lot of healing can happen. Because for me, I thought marriage was not possible for me. I had some wounds from growing up that I was like, nah, this, but God showed me no, yes, it is. So that is awesome. One question I want to ask you is, looking at everything that's happened with Exodus last 6 or 7 years, um, what has it taught you about God and how God works and ways that we can evangelize that we may not think of as evangelization methods?
Gosh, that's yeah.
Surprises along the way.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the biggest thing that I can think of is just that, like, the next step is always right in front of you. Um, and what I mean by that, I think I mean that for like ministers in the church, doing ministry, whether that's independently or that's in dioceses, like the next step is always right in front of you. I think sometimes in the church we can get really discouraged by the things that aren't going great.
Mhm.
Um, and we can just kind of stagnate in that place or just like accept like the status quo on stuff. But I've just always found that like whenever we need to make a change at Exodus, and it happens regularly where it's like, hey, we've been doing this for a while, we're gonna do something different. I'm
Yeah.
like, let's just give it a go. It's always a little nerve wracking. I'm in the middle of one of those decisions right now, and I'm like, well, this is not what I thought, but I think we got to go for it.
Mhm.
And the next step is always clear. And I've just found that, like, just as an example, there's one time I was trying to make a decision on something, and I was talking to my spiritual director about it, and he's like, you're talking around this thing a lot, but like, have you just gone before Jesus Christ and asked him the question? And I was like, no, I've not done that, Father.
Hmm.
And that made a huge impact on me. And it's actually, as I'm making decisions now on a daily basis. I just do my best to just like place myself before the face of Christ. And I have this image Velasquez painted. I think it's 17th century. It's just the crucifixion. It's this really stark painting where the foreground is the corpus of Christ, and he's very like white, kind of radiant, but the background is very dark. And when you see this painting in Spain, it's just like even more alarming.
Hmm.
And so like I've loved this painting, and so I always just like go before it, just like, Lord, what do and I just ask very concrete questions.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want us to make this decision, or
Yeah.
whatever it is? And I'm just the Lord's alive, man. Like he speaks. He's a divine person, and
Yes.
and
Yes.
like he's the center of everything. He's behind reality. Nothing is here apart from him. And like when you believe that and like you let yourself like really believe that, well, he has a lot to say about a lot,
Mhm.
and he can work wonders when you just surrender, like, and you
Yeah.
just open yourself up to him. So I don't know, for whatever, I don't know how helpful that is, before
Yeah.
that question, but when I think about evangelization today, it's like as we're making decisions, processing things, it's just like, hey, let's remember the Lord of glory and everything, and just, yeah, allow him to inspire us.
I love that. I actually did a little episode a couple months ago called One Step at a Time, but sometimes we get so overwhelmed trying to build this new thing. I'm sure it was a daunting task when you thought about scaling Exodus, but it's just a step at a time, a day at a time, and trusting that, yeah, you're not crazy to talk to the Holy Spirit all day long and just ask God, what should I do? What should I do? He is alive and active, and he wants these things to grow more than we do. So it's like having the best coach possible on hand at all times.
No, it's
So
so true. It's so true. And when you one of the things I realized early on, like, okay, what's my role at Exodus? And it's changed a lot over the years, especially as we've grown our team. I just realized, like, what do I need to do? Just like remember that like the Lord is the leader and
yeah,
just listen, like that's it.
wow,
And if we can do that, we'll be fine. And as long as he wants to use us, great. And as soon as he's done with us, or at least in this form, great. Like we'll go
hmm
on our way.
hmm
But like there's just a lot of freedom in that place. And I think even if we think about like the book of Exodus, it's like it's so easy, especially as men, to like kind of read ourselves into the figure of Moses. And there's some awesome opportunities for reflection in that. But like part of it's just like, I don't know, maybe we're Aaron, maybe we just need to like hold the Lord's hand up,
yeah,
and try not to do the whole golden calf thing over again. But like,
hmm
how can we, kind of serve the Lord, and there's just so much freedom that comes from that, and like realizing the burden is actually on Christ's shoulders, and he's carried it already.
yeah. Wow. Well, there you go, folks. Just listen to God. He will show you the way. And on that note of listening, if you've been listening to this podcast, you're probably thinking, all right, how do I sign up for Exodus? So I know the next one's starting this coming Monday, the 17th, right,
Yeah,
James, to lead up to Easter?
that's right, Justin. Yeah. So our biggest time of the year is January time, 90 days to Easter. And obviously the date for Easter moves with the calendar, but January 17th is our start date this year. So yeah, we'll have tens of thousands of men from all over the world making the journey.
Hmm
One of the things I didn't realize until a couple years into it. So one of the things I'd say as well, before I even say that thing, is this whole 90 days to Easter thing wasn't our idea. Like guys just in the first year loved it, shared it with their friends.
Hmm.
The men did this basically, but we see
Wow.
70% of our guys every year in this, couple weeks.
Yeah.
And it's super, super exciting for us. Day 45 is always Ash Wednesday. So it's just a really powerful way to kind of lean into Lent, and it just leads, I think, to a really powerful encounter with Christ at the resurrection. That yeah, a lot of men have found a lot of blessing in. So January 17th, check it out. Exodus90.com has all the information you might need to learn more about it, and whether or not it's for you this year, we'll be here next year, so
Yeah.
maybe just take it to prayer. And to us, we really look at it like a spiritual exercise. It's
hmm
something to be discerned and prepared for. And if you're up for it, that's awesome. And if this year isn't the year, that's okay too.
Well, we will put the website link in the show notes. So, folks, please check it out. Invite your friends or share with others you think might be interested. I can assure you from doing it last year, it is worth it. Everyone should do it at least once. I really believe that. So, please check it out. And they have an awesome app, by the way, the Exodus 90 app. That was really helpful to me last year. You guys got any updates to the app this year? Some lessons learned from last year's version?
Yeah, tons. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're working on it all the time, and
Yeah.
actually building our app team
Awesome.
currently. The thing we're working on that should be rolling out actually by the time this launches is helping men to find fraternities. So this can be one of
Oh,
the
that's great.
largest burden to Exodus.
Hmm
More than a third of guys say they don't end up going through it because they weren't able to find a group.
Yeah.
And so we're excited to kind of prioritize pairing men locally
Yeah.
where that's not possible, pairing guys by availability for remote groups. But maybe keep that in your prayers. There's just been a
Yes.
ton to roll out to do that well.
Mhm.
But it should be done in time for start this year, which we're super excited about.
That is awesome. Well, thank you to you and your team for having that approach of always just assessing where things are, learning and improving. That is huge. So, if you don't mind, we'll close with some hot take questions, James. We always like asking our guests some hot takes. So,
Okay.
favorite book of the Bible?
Yeah, I got to say the Book of Exodus.
You got to do it.
Kind of consumed my life at this point. So
Yeah.
the Book of Exodus.
If you didn't, I'd be worried if you didn't say Exodus. Favorite saint? We already talked about this, but why is he your favorite saint?
Yeah, John Henry Newman. So I met him in high school.
You met him?
Took a class on him and just was
Oh, okay.
so inspired by his thought and had to read
Yeah.
a ton of
Yeah.
his work.
Yeah.
And I've ended up taking a couple of retreats to this little monastery that he built when he was working through his conversion. And there's a lot that he's taught me, but probably the greatest thing is just the priority of the invisible. And I've already kind of referred to this in things that I've said today, but what we can see is not even half the equation of reality.
Mhm.
And there are spiritual forces that are so much more powerful and dynamic than anything that we're doing that are influencing the course of history. And as Catholics, as Christians, like it's our calling to remain in that kind of contemplative stance, to see that and to
Mhm.
remember that, like, we have saints and angels to call upon for help and support. Obviously the Lord and the Father, the Son, the Spirit, Mary. But Newman helped me to see that. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't, before I met Newman, it was like, I had my prayer life and then I had my real life, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to say. And Newman helped me to realize, like, no, it's one thing. And the spiritual stuff is the most real, even if it's invisible. And before that, I just didn't understand that.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. So, if you were doing Exodus, what would be the hardest discipline for you out of the disciplines? Or are you just a master of all of them? Super Exodus.
Oh, I'm not a master of all of them. Yeah. No, I find it as humbling every year as it is for anyone. So as a team, just to stay in the spirit of the work and to be offering it for all the guys that are going through Exodus throughout the year. We take cold showers. It's just like a practice that we have as a team. And honestly, even years into it, I hate them still. Like, I just don't like them very much.
You
It
do
takes,
cold showers all the time?
yeah, we do as a
Your
team.
life is cold showers?
Basically, yeah, yeah.
Wow. Guys,
So
James cares about you,
there's
okay?
some feast days where I give myself a break,
Oh
but
my gosh.
but that's kind of, but I don't like them. Like, I haven't, like, they haven't gotten easier. They haven't anything. It's just like
Wow.
every day.
Sucks,
It's like,
man.
even this morning, honestly, Justin, I was just like, I stared at it for like 20 seconds. I was just like, what am
Oh
I
my
doing?
gosh.
So I don't know. I think that stands out. Yeah.
Yeah. I am deeply impressed right now. Easiest discipline for you?
Yeah. Man, I think, gosh, all of them are hard at different times. I think I'd probably say that's the silent prayer time. So we ask guys to pray for an hour a day and then take at least 20 minutes of that for silence. It's like, when
Yeah.
I don't have that time, I just I don't feel like the same person, honestly.
Right.
So it's more about, there's some selfishness in that a little bit. But I just, that's just kind of a part of my life that, is not just an Exodus thing. It's just, you got to have that in your life. So
Yeah.
let's do that.
And why should every man participate in Exodus?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's just pray over it, and if it's for you, if there's something that draws you, someone invites you, take it up. We really don't subscribe to, like, when you do men's work, you can kind of, like, find yourself in these caricatures of masculinity that you actually
Mhm.
don't believe or support, but
Mhm.
just, like, that's how people view masculinity, and so
Mhm.
sometimes it can kind of devolve, I think, in different directions that aren't even that helpful. Especially, I mean, I'd say probably even especially in the church. So it's not like Exodus is one of these things where, if you don't do this, you're not a man. Like, we don't
Right.
look at it that way at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, at the same time, what I have been so struck by is how people at such different places in their spiritual life find something here. And as, like, priests and bishops would go through it and stuff, I'd be like, man, what do you need from this? And they
Mhm.
always have something to say. And
Mhm.
other guys who have not done the doorsteps of a church in years or ever find something in it. And it's like, well, that's super
Mm.
interesting too.
Wow.
So I would just say you should, if that invitation is there and the time is right. It's most of our guys are married too.
Yeah.
So we strongly encourage guys, make sure your spouse, is aware of what Exodus entails. It entails a lot. And
Yeah.
depending upon your family rhythm, it can mess with it a little bit,
Yeah.
And so if it's an intentional time that you've prepared for, that your wife is ready for and excited about, and you have her support,
Mhm.
it's going to be awesome,
Mhm.
but if you don't have that, it's not the right time,
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah. All right. One thing every Catholic needs to know.
Oh man, it's such a gift to be alive right now. And I have people sometimes think I'm optimistic, but I'm just filled with hope. And
Yeah.
it's almost like the worse things can get in certain places, the more excited I become, because it's like, great, all of this stuff is going to become an opportunity for Christ to win.
Mhm.
And I just believe that, like, he's the center of history. He's died, he's rose again, and he's brought us into sonship with the Father. And it's like, as a Catholic, in the fullness, and as Christians, it's like we have the identity that God intended for us, from the beginning of time. And it's like a lot of people don't. And
Mhm.
like, what a privilege and what a gift that is to live from and to own and to accept. And yeah, I'll just never forget. There's this priest in my life where we were having this super discouraging conversation about the things going on in the world. And it was all about just like the dignity of life and ways in which that was, just being more compromised as we were going along, specifically in like scientific advancements. And it was like, I just felt this darkness. And he's like, you know what? This is our time. Like, this is the time for us right now. Like, we are so blessed to be alive. And it's
Mhm.
just had a big effect on me. So, yeah, what should we know? It's like, this is our time. And that
Amen.
should really excite you, because every saint, has lived for their time, and Christ intended them for it. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to be alive, and I'm so grateful to be a Catholic, and so grateful to know God as my Father, like through the incarnation of Christ. So
Amen.
that's it. Gratitude.
That's awesome. And favorite Bible verse?
Yeah, so this has changes for me a lot, honestly, pretty regularly. Right now, I'm really big on the identity verses in the Gospels. Christ's baptism, "You are my beloved Son, and you I am well pleased." So,
Hmm.
I've just been shuffling through those lately, and just thinking about those a lot. So, just trying to live more and more from that identity.
Awesome. Seems like you spend a lot of time in Scripture.
Yeah,
Try to.
I'm so far from like a scholar or anything, though. So when
Yeah.
people like ask me like technical questions, I'm like, hey, I
Yeah.
don't know, but yeah, it's just, it's all there. It's all there. And yeah, so those verses are definitely standing out for me right now.
Awesome. Well, James, thank you for all you have done for the church, you and your team, your prayers for the men participating. So, folks, visit exodus90.com, download the app. And what a great, so great to know that y'all are helping people find fraternities that can't find their own. So, really recommend and implore you to share this with the men in your life. Thanks again for the time, James.
Justin, appreciate you. Thank you. God bless you. And so grateful for this opportunity today.